Hello! Today I'm going to be talking about the moral issue of the pornographic culture. This is a topic that's very near to me because, honestly, it's something that I struggled with as a younger believer. It's an issue that plagued me in my younger days as I was learning to walk this Christian walk. And I know a lot of people who have a similar story, who also have kind of felt that burden on their life. So I think it's an important topic and one that I'm interested in dealing with from an ethical standpoint. So let's dive in here. So the issue, the pornographic culture. And what I mean by the culture is not just pornography in itself, but this culture that it's generated in the United States in particular, and in the last several decades, it's kind of become ingrained into our culture. We see this in the movie, film, and TV industry. Pornography is gaining legitimacy. Part of that's due to relaxed standards of decency in the media. In movies and TV shows, it's becoming more and more okay to show more and more skin. There's people fighting legal battles for porn to be protected under free speech. So you get this gaining of legitimacy in the mainstream. There's a lot of money to be made in the sex industry, which includes pornography. So you have a lot of people go into the industry interested in making money. So there's a lot of product on the market. I mentioned here it's not viewed as wrong by much of the secular world. Picture a guy late at night browsing the internet, looks at a few images for some instant gratification, logs out and goes on his merry way. A lot of people don't view that as wrong. No one's getting hurt, so what's the big deal? So that kind of plays into the issue. People point out that there's no explicit prohibition in the Bible for pornography. The Bible never says the word pornography. It talks about sexual sin and adultery quite a bit, but not specifically having to do with pornography, and that kind of muddies things up a little bit. It does, however, fall into the greater category of sexual sin. One thing to be noted here is that sexuality is no more corrupted than other desires, but it does have more far-reaching consequences. Who is affected by this issue? Short answer is everyone. Men and women, young and old, Christian and non-Christian. With regards to men, literally every Christian guy that I've ever talked to about this issue has struggled with pornography. If there are any out there, I haven't met them, or I haven't, talked to them about it. But it's so widespread among Christian men, especially young Christian men. By the way, women also struggle with this too. We talk about men struggling with pornography, but it's women as well. Maybe not quite as much, but women are affected in large part because they're exploited by the industry. They're often the subjects of pornography. Younger people perhaps are influenced by the media a little bit more because they grew up in it, but older people definitely are susceptible to being taken captive as well. With regards to Christian and non-Christian, sometimes the topic is considered taboo, so it doesn't get talked about very much. You have a Christian that falls into the trap of pornography and is afraid to talk about it. So Christians can be susceptible in that way. And like we talked about before, non-Christians oftentimes don't even see it as wrong. So it really can affect everyone and anyone. Competing ethical principles on this topic. As far as the people who will defend pornography as being good or okay, there's definitely a feministic view with regards to women's empowerment. The woman has a right to her own body. She can express it in any way that she wants. Therefore, being engaged in pornography, the production of it, is a valid expression, a valid sexual expression that the women can choose to do, and that's an ethic that kind of defends the use of pornography. I want to make very clear that it's not all feminists who believe this. In fact, there's definitely a split in feminism for those who are pro-pornography and those who are against it. For instance, one woman that we studied in our book was Beverly Harrison. She definitely falls in the category of one who is against pornography. You might recall her big issue was breaking down oppressive societal structures. So in her mind, she looked at the dualism between men and women, and how women are oppressed by these social structures, and she views pornography in a similar light, where women are being exploited, and therefore pornography is kind of a part of the problem. In fact, in her book, Justice in the Making, Feminist Social Ethics, Beverly Harrison said this. She said, "Pornography is not wrong because it is erotic. It is wrong because it is predicated upon an exploitative power of relation." So that is all. That is just to say that not all feminists are in support of pornography, but there's definitely an ethic out there which would defend it, based on the idea of empowerment. A lot of people who are against pornography, especially Christians, go back to St. Augustine, not just for his general ethical beliefs, his biblical worldview, but that he was someone who struggled, who struggled with sexual sin, and he was very upfront about it. So he's kind of this guy who we revere as a great church leader, but who also was very real about his struggles. He talks about how creation is good, and along with that, human sexuality is good. It's used. It's part of who we are. It's part of how God made us, and God's creation is good. But then sin enters the world, and there's a distortion. So human sexuality is distorted and disordered as a result of sin. Furthermore, human sexuality must be sanctified to serve the ends for which it was created. So this idea of redeeming that which was made impure by sin and by the fall. Augustine also gives very practical insights into what sexual sin can do. He talks about images fixed by sexual habit stored in the memory. So when Augustine got out of his indulging of sexual pleasures, he actually talked about later on, even a decade later, recalling some of those images in his mind. And so while Augustine doesn't necessarily talk about pornography, he talks more about different sexual sins, I think we can apply some of his principles and some of his teachings to this topic of pornography. So what biblical insight can we look to on this topic? I've listed a few passages here, and I'll actually read a few of them and talk about why it should inform the way we view pornography and the pornographic culture. Genesis 1:26-27 says that God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, over all creatures that move along the ground." So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. This idea that we're to be image bearers of Christ and to take that role seriously. We're made in God's image. And pornography kind of distorts that and uses it for unholy purposes. Genesis 2:24 says, that is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. This idea of the unity of marriage. Job 31:1 says, "I have made a covenant with my eyes to not look lustfully at a young woman." Job recognized the importance of not letting his eyes wander and look at things that they're not supposed to be looking at. Proverbs 7:6-27. It's a long one, but it's kind of a proverb talking about the simple being led astray into sexual desires. The proverb it urges the simple to gain wisdom and gain understanding, that they might not be led astray and not fall into this rut of things like pornography. The whole book of Song of Songs. What I want to mention here, because this really is the one book of the Bible that people turn to for things of a sexual nature, wisdom in that regard. the book of Song of Songs, it's erotic, but it's not pornographic. If Song of Songs, let me say this, Song of Songs would be uncomfortably explicit were it not in Scripture. But the fact that it is in Scripture talks about this idea of erotic love. Erotic love is about self-giving, and pornography is about possession. Erotic love between a husband and wife is this component of privacy. It's done in the marital bed. It's done between one man and one woman. It's nobody else's business. But pornography is this public display. It's exposure. So Song of Songs can give us this idea of what erotic love in a marriage is supposed to look like, measured against what is done in the use of pornography. Matthew 5:28 says, "But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart." This is Jesus taking things to the next level, saying that you know that adultery is wrong, but let me tell you, even looking lustfully at a woman is the same as committing adultery. So you can tell what Jesus thinks about what it means to look. And so, like I said, pornography isn't explicitly mentioned here, but I think we can apply that very easily to pornography. 1 Corinthians 6:15-16 says, "Do you not know that your bodies are members of Christ himself? Shall I then take the members of Christ and unite them with a prostitute? Never. Do you not know that he who unites himself with a prostitute is one with her in body? For it is said, the two become one flesh." Paul references Genesis 2:24 here. And this is kind of this idea of the importance of the physical body and how it's a representation of Christ himself, and to take that role seriously. 1 Corinthians 7:4 says, "The wife does not have authority over her own body, but yields it to her husband. In the same way, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but yields it to his wife." This idea that your body does not belong to yourself. My body belongs to my wife. My wife's body belongs to me. We have no business using it for our own gratification via pornography. 1 John 2:16 says, "For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life come not from the Father, but from the world." And we should be looking at things above and not on earthly things. And certainly, pornography is one of those things that is of the world and does not come from the Father. So what I think we can conclude here, which I think a lot of us would agree on, is that by affirming the biblical view of human sexuality, we as Christians cannot engage with the pornographic culture which is so prevalent around us. Thank you.